Hello, health coaches. As we are headed into the final months of 2020, it is the perfect time to start planning ahead and thinking about what comes next, thinking about 2021. All right, we're going to make it. It's going to happen. Especially when it comes to things that take a bit of planning, when there's going to be some back and forth and there's going to be like coordinating with other people. Seriously, you want to start now. You don't want to wait until January and then start trying to figure out how you're going to plan an event or hold a workshop or do something in January. Now is your time. And today we want to talk about workshops because they've always been one of my favorite ways for coaches, especially new coaches or any coaches, to get exposure, build your mailing list, and get yourself in front of prospective clients. All good things. And today we're welcoming Kristen Ciccolini back to the show for her expertise in this particular area. Thank you for joining us again, Kristen.
Hi, thank you. I'm glad to be here again.
Now, you've been on the show before. We've talked a little bit about workshops before together, but it's been a while. So for anyone who's new to the podcast or new to our Facebook group, can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your health coaching practice?
Yeah, so my business is Good Witch Kitchen, and I've been in business for almost 4 years now. So do you want me to go with like how I started with the workshops, or?
You just tell everyone how awesome you are. I need them to know that we have practicing health coaches out there doing the work, because we got new health coaches listening who are like, oh my God, how am I ever going to make this work? You've only been in business for 4 years. So yeah, tell us how you use a little bit about workshops, but just in general, what do you do with your practice?
Yeah, so I've evolved over time. So when I first started, it was like very generic and just the same thing that everyone else does. Like before I learned to narrow it down and like all of the things that we do in Healthy Profit University, which is really nice and helpful. But yeah, I started doing all the generic stuff. Then I started moving more into focusing on emotional eating and uh, coming away from the diet mentality and diet culture and all that. But now I've sort of found my flow a little bit. I feel like a lot of people in like year 3 start to really find their groove and find their voice. And that's kind of what I've done over the last year is, channel my feminism into my business as well. So now I focus on menstrual health from a feminist perspective. And I've been starting to teach more workshops on that, but for typical like corporate workshops, I still go a little bit more general.
Right. You're not going into a corporation talking about menstrual flow right off the bat.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. But that's interesting. It's interesting how you can combine getting exposure to a wider audience and then also having a more focused niche. And maybe we can come back to that. I want to mention just right up front for everybody who is listening or watching, if this topic is of interest to you, it's something that you want to be doing more of, you want to be getting out there with workshops in your community, tapping into local corporations or even corporations around the world. We want to show you exactly how to do that, how to put together the actual workshops that you would be using and that you can sell and that you can earn money from. So if you're interested in that, you can join me and Kristen on November 10th, which is coming up in just a couple weeks, for a free training and exactly how to do that. And you can register for free at, wait for it, healthcoachpower.com/create workshop. And for those of you who are here live, I'm going to throw that in the comments for you now. So Kristen, like I said, we've talked a little bit before about you giving workshops. Yes, tell us a little bit more about the workshops that you've given, how you have found them to help your business and how they've become an important part of what you do.
Yeah, so like I said, I started 4-ish years ago. And I started with healthy cooking classes first at the local community center. So that was sort of my first foray into doing anything in front of anyone. And maybe you can tell I'm a little bit more comfortable in front of the camera now and in front of like talking to people, where I definitely was not before. So that really helped. And as I did those, as I started to do more of those cooking classes, people would ask me more questions about nutrition and, all these different things, always wanted more tips on healthy eating and all that. So I asked the community center if I could do more workshop style events. And that was great, because I think that's something you could learn, is like pay attention to the questions that people ask you, because you could expand that into a workshop. So yeah, doing those really helped me get over my fear of public speaking. Like I used to, like in high school, I used to cry to my guidance counselor about doing any
Oh
public
no.
speaking. And yeah, like that's how nervous I would get. Um, but since then I've moved into more corporate wellness. So bringing the wellness workshops to people's offices. And I've been doing that for a lot of big companies, both in Boston and, all over the country because we're online, so we can do it forever. So they used to be sort of like side income for me. I'd focus more on my private coaching and just do corporate wellness like every once in a while. But workshops are scalable and they require a lot less of your time than one-on-one with someone every week. So they can be a really solid income stream for your business. So that's how I've evolved over time and started working it into my business as a regular thing.
Yeah, and as a regular income stream. We love that. I think that, well, you already touched on this fear of public speaking, and so that's a thing, right? We'll just say that for everybody. Most of us are scared to pieces before we, get up in front of an audience for the first time, whether it's in person or over the computer. Sometimes the computer can be worse because like there's more technology to worry about. But let's set that aside for a second and talk more about where you're doing your workshops and how do you go about getting them booked?
Well, now that I have a roster of clients that I've worked with in the past, I often just go back to them every once in a while and say like,
That's
"Hey,
nice.
I've got this really great new workshop. I think your team might be interested in it based on how much they love the last one." And repeat customers are a lot of my workshop business. But for new clients, it's often either through a connection that I have at the company or through cold emailing. So if you have a connection, that's obviously a better way because then you can get an intro from the person directly and the conversation can easily get started from there. You tell them what you do, share a couple workshops that might be interesting, get on the phone, get scheduled. That's kind of like a seamless transition. And in the past, reaching out cold, meaning you don't have any connection, any in like that, in the past, it didn't really work quite as well, but definitely I've noticed since March over the last few months, it's definitely been picking up. And I think because companies are looking for ways to keep their employees engaged from home and to keep their spirits up. And, while some people might feel a little bit tired from being all on Zoom all day for work, I know that other people look at it as sort of a little respite during the day because, you're usually on Zoom for, boring work meetings, whereas your workshop can be like educational and interactive and something different and fun, and your personality can make it more fun too. So, I think people are looking for those kinds of things. And also craving connection after being home alone for so long. So, yeah, long story short, reaching out cold is a more viable option now than it used to be for getting workshops booked with clients, but also definitely take advantage of your personal network.
Wow. So there's like a silver lining in COVID and all of us in the health coach world trying to make connections. People are more receptive to this cold call and cold emailing idea. I love that. And just going back to what you said about reaching out to who you might know and like your contacts, just for anyone who's like, I don't know anyone. It's likely you do. It's likely you
Yeah.
know someone. So when you're talking about that, like who might you know at a company that would be helpful towards, do you have to know the HR person?
You don't, no, not necessarily. I mean, it's helpful, of course. But those aren't always the people that make the decision. Sometimes it's an office manager, sometimes, so whoever you can just ask them, do you have any, does your company have wellness initiatives? Do you do any extracurricular type workshops? Some places only do like sort of tangential trainings or, so maybe you could be the new wellness initiative. So whatever it is, you can just ask people what kind of what kind of things that they do at work and see if they can intro you to the right person, because sometimes it is the HR person, sometimes it's not, sometimes like the person at the highest makes the decision, depends on the structure of the company. So it really can be anyone as long as you have someone who can email you or email that person and CC you and give you that like direct introduction. That can be helpful.
Yeah, awesome. So even if you know an entry level whomever at a company, they're still going to know their HR person or whoever in charge of the business, their boss or
Exactly.
whoever it is, and then they can intro you. So you don't have to know like the president in order to make a connection. I just want to make that point. Michelle is here live and she's asking, what size companies are you targeting? I think that's a good question.
I personally target anything over 100 employees because that's just what feels worth my time right now in terms of what I'm charging. Because the smaller companies don't necessarily have a big budget for these types of workshops. However, if you are just starting out, they can be a good avenue for you just to get some practice because typically they don't have a huge budget. So, especially if you don't feel super comfortable charging a lot right now, if you're just getting used to it. Not to say you can't start out charging a lot because you totally can, but again, it's a starting point. So you can really target companies of any size, but I prefer to go with at least 100 employees because at least I know that they have some sort of budget for that kind of thing.
Okay, and tell us a couple of the companies that you have gone into. I think we'll recognize some of them, and which have been your favorites?
I've worked with Grubhub, which is the food delivery service. They have the HQ, I think. Is it the HQ? Probably. Big office in Boston. um, they're actually a repeat client, so I've done them a couple times in person and online. So that was kind of nice. In the transition, I went back to my in person clients and said, "Well, we've done this before, and it's been great. So why don't we do it online?"
Cool.
I've also worked with Mimecast. I've worked with ButcherBox, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. They're actually local to Boston, so that was nice. Yeah, I tend to focus on tech companies because that's what my previous career was. I was in social media marketing, so I focus on people whose lives I understand. So typically, it's like the younger tech people, married, maybe not married, definitely don't have kids. Those are my people because I don't. That's the life I know. So yeah, I try to find the companies where I can relate to the employees.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, back in the day when I did stuff like this, I would go into advertising agencies. Another thing that would be useful is if you are local to these places. So you're in Boston, there are a lot of tech companies in Boston, right?
Yes.
So wherever you are, that might, help you decide what kind of company that you want to target. Have you ever called? I'm just curious if you've ever emailed or reached out to or been connected with like a really large company like PepsiCo or something obscenely large like that?
Yes, and it never worked out because they're cheap as hell. So
Ah,
I hate to say that, but yeah, I've like Facebook. I've have conversations with Facebook and Amazon didn't want to pay, and Facebook asked me for a discount, and I just said no, because it's like yeah, sure it's exposure, but typically with corporate workshops, it's not really about getting clients. It's more about the income from that workshop because when you go into a workplace, it's not going to be filled with your perfect ideal client. So I look at it more as just an income stream versus a marketing opportunity. So yeah, it just didn't make sense for me to do that because if I'm going to go in for a discounted rate to not talk to my ideal clients, like it's not worth it. So yeah, it sounds crazy to me that I even say that right now that I turned down Facebook and Amazon, but it's hey, you got to make your money.
yeah, well, you have your priorities. And that was a question I had for you. Like, do you consider doing, because all right, to be clear, doing a workshop like this absolutely is a way of marketing yourself. It absolutely is a way of getting exposure, of gaining confidence, of honing your public speaking skills, like all good things, potentially finding clients, all of that stuff. And it can be an income generating activity. So it sounds like in your business, your success with workshops is mostly around actually generating income from them. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. And I have gotten clients through my workshops, but I don't set out to make that happen. That's not the intention of them.
Mhm.
Like I said, it's more of an income stream than a marketing tool. But it does both work. It does both of those things if you do the workshops well. So unlike a webinar where you're giving that hard sell at the end, with workshops, what you do is you can just pepper in the client stories here and there. Say like when you're talking about something like I had a client say to me the other day this, or when this happens, I usually tell my clients whatever. So you can use those kind of brief stories to illustrate a point you're trying to make. and then move on with whatever you're talking about. So it gets the point across that this is what you do for a living and you have clients and you're busy and you're working, but it's not overtly selling. It's more, it sort of plants a seed with your audience. And like I said, I've
Right.
had
So
clients come from workshops, but I think it's because I treat them as not as an opportunity to sell, you know?
yeah, absolutely. They see you as an expert. First of all, the company that they work for has trusted you. So there's like this built-in trust that you truly are an expert. You've been vetted. So anyone that you're presenting to is going to be that much more likely to pay attention, treat you with respect, assume that you do know what you're talking about, like all good things, especially when you're a new coach.
Yeah.
And yes, I've had corporate workshops turn into clients without having, and you don't make a hard sales pitch during these things. You're there to provide value. And I know that's what most health coaches want to do. We want to be out there providing value, not selling, not, uh, offering our services every time we turn around, like pitching ourselves, but actually being out there and helping people. And that's what you do with these. So for 2021, kind of looking ahead, not exactly sure what's happening in like the landscape of the world, but what topics do you think, just based on your experience, people are going to be most interested in? Like, what topics should we be pitching if we're planning for next year?
Well, obviously, immune health is going to be top of mind, just as it has been since March. I know that I've seen like in the Facebook group, everyone saying like, "Oh, I this client wants an immune health workshop," and so and so. Like, it's been something that we've been talking about for months.
Mhm.
So that can be an evergreen thing that you teach all year long, or it can be one thing that you pull out around winter time. But yeah, I think immune health is going to be pretty important over the next few months and beyond. And as we plan for the new year, of course, everyone always has resolutions on their mind at that time. So anything that covers new habits or getting into new routines might be helpful. So, learning how to meal plan or finally kicking the sugar habit in 2021, and one thing that you can do is sort of repackage those evergreen workshops. So you can teach those anytime, right? But you could also switch up the titles. So maybe you teach that workshop on how to kick sugar all year round, but in January it could be like making 2021 your sugar-free year, or meal prep your way to a less stressful 2021. Just switching up the title throughout the year so it's more enticing, especially if it's like a free workshop that you're offering to your audience. Like, you can only do so much with your audience. With corporate workshops, you can, put those everywhere. So in terms of topics, early in the year, it's always good to focus on the resolutions, and then definitely immune health at this time, I think will be good.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. And you're right. Like, the same workshop, you can hold it again and again and again and again. Like, if you're going to a different corporation each time, it can be the same exact presentation. It becomes so easy because you've done it once, you've done it twice, you've done it 3 times. You can just whip it out like it's nothing, and yet you're still getting paid for it. So that's an amazing thing. Sugar's always a topic that people want to cover. I remember doing sugar workshops. That never goes out of style. And I think personally, it makes more sense if you're going to put in the effort to creating a workshop, learning how to, give that workshop effectively, do something that's evergreen. Don't put all your effort into something that you can only do once. Like, it's about, I don't know, like the 2020 election, or I don't know what workshop that would be, but like that's only valid for a very, very short period of time. Create something that's a little more evergreen. It will, then you can rinse and reuse. You get much more mileage out of it. And that's something that I know we'll be talking about during our training in a couple of weeks. Again, if you guys want to learn how to actually put the materials together so that you can feel really confident pitching yourself, head over to healthcoachpower.com/create workshop. Kristen's going to be showing you, like, here's what you need to have on your screen. Here's the kind of script that you need, so that you can actually create something for yourself. And then, so on that topic though, Kristen, tell us, at least in brief for today, like, what are the different components that go into a workshop? What different materials do you have when you're walking in the door?
So you don't need a lot. You definitely don't need a lot. You need to prepare, but you don't necessarily need a ton of materials unless you're doing something really interactive or in person. At the very least, you just need some notes to read off of. But what I usually do is I write a script for myself and I create slides to show, because Well, you can definitely have it as just you standing in front of people talking or doing your Zoom call with just your video. Slides can be a nice thing to add because it can help add some context. It gives your audience something else to look at and it keeps them a little bit more engaged. So I recommend having slides and notes or slides and notes or a script. So also, if you really want to get fancy, you can put together a PDF or a workbook to go along with your class, or like a one-page PDF with all of the main takeaways for them to go home with, so they don't really have to take notes. I'll tell you, I almost never do that though, but it is good to know that that's an option because you can charge more if you offer more material. So
Yeah,
there's
of
yeah,
course.
so there's a one sheet type of thing with the takeaways. I've only done that when clients have asked. And then if I've done a workbook, it's usually something that goes along with something more interactive or like a longer pre-recorded training. But yeah, the very least, like notes, slides. It's
Notes,
not that.
slides.
Yeah.
Have you ever brought food when you're there in person? And I know this is maybe pre-COVID talking, but have you ever brought snacks?
I have, and it's more of a pain than anything because like people like it, but it's like it's not going to make them sign up with me or anything. So I find, I mean, if I'm making it myself, I feel like a lot of people want to do that, but it's also just a waste of time. I find if you do a corporate thing, if you can get them to like sponsor a lunch or something, buy lunch for everyone that attends, that's happened before. But yeah, less work on your end. Don't do it.
I think that's wise advice. I remember
Yeah.
doing it in the beginning, and you're carrying a plate of cookies or something like this, and you're trying to look
Yeah.
professional. Meanwhile, you got crumbs on you. It's no good. All right, just wanted to ask about that. Boy, it's been a long time since I held something like this. We have a question here. Michelle asks, do you use a contract?
Yes, I have a client agreement that I use, or a speaking agreement that I use with everyone that lays out everything. So the date, time, obviously, if it's in person, how I want the room set up, payment terms and all that. So everything is laid out just so both of us are on the same page. And that's always good to have. I have them sign that so I can keep the date.
Okay, cool. And I mean, I don't know about you, but a lot of things in my business I did very informally at first. And then when I had a problem, I was like, I need a contract or I need to formalize this. So has anything ever happened like that, a funny little mishap or something where you then realized, oh, I better formalize this in a contract?
Um, Not with speaking, although no, not with speaking, although the only thing that really happens is sometimes like they won't pay you soon
Mhm.
enough, which is annoying, but I feel like it really depends on every company's different sort of finance department and what they do in their process and all that. So I do make sure to ask like what's your process because what my process might be might not agree with their finance department. So we just try to figure that out and get on the same page so I'm not like waiting for a check like weeks on end. So definitely good to figure that out beforehand.
Yeah, so smart. I remember doing a set of workshops for a very prominent gym chain, which I will not name. And they just didn't pay me. They just didn't pay. And every time I would email, they would just feed me a line of BS and no check would come. And I had to then contact their corporate headquarters. And I ended up like eventually getting paid like part of what they owed me. And it was unbelievable. But yeah, even when you're working with it's not like an individual who doesn't pay you, a private client or something like that who just forgets. I mean, you're talking about businesses that have finance departments. You really have to stay on top of them. So I love that you're preempting all of that by talking about your terms of payment upfront and having them sign a contract.
Yeah.
Super smart. So when you're looking at next year in your business, or I want you to answer this two ways, okay? One for yourself. You've been in business for a while, you have experience, you've done a lot of these, you're doing other things with your business. And then also for like a new health coach. Like, how many workshops are we talking? Are you doing it like once a month or have you found a magic number?
So for me, depending on the time of year and the different things I have going on in my business, sometimes I'm doing one or two a week. Sometimes it's once a month. So, no real magic number. I wish I could give you an easier answer than that, but it's the same thing as like figuring out how much to charge. It's like, well, how much money do you want to make, and then working backwards. Um, I think for a new coach, I mean, it depends on your income needs, how much you're charging, what else you have going on, and do you want this to be one of several income streams, or do you want it to be your main income stream? Because you can charge, $100 and maybe do 10 small companies a month, or you could charge $1,000 and do one big company. So it's all relative. I know that for me in 2021, I want to try to get down to at least once a week. So
Wow.
that's my big goal. Only because like I want this to be my main, or one of my main income streams. So like coaching and workshops, like that's all I want. Just narrow it down a little bit. But I mean, starting out, I would just say like aim for once a month. That might feel good. That one alone might just feel scary if you're new starting out. So, maybe just start with the first one and see how you feel about it and then set a goal.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, definitely do your first, but I would say with your first couple workshops, or if you're new to this, as with anything, it's going to freak you out and you're going to plan like way too much and you're going to obsess over like what you're wearing and oh my God, and it's good. You know what I mean? It's just going to be a lot. Even though it's later, it'll be easy. So like give yourself space for that, and don't book 3 in the same week if you're right out of the gate. Maybe you're going to do 1 per quarter next year. Like that would be a very reasonable goal if you're brand new to this. So you're going to have just 1 workshop every quarter of the year. See if you can get that booked. It could even be with the same company, right? You're going to come in and do something seasonally for them. Boom, done. And then maybe from there you can up your goal to once a month. You're going to book something. That way you still give yourself lots of breathing room. You do a workshop and you realize, I want to change a couple things. You have time to do that before the next one. Don't gang them up on yourself too closely. But once a week sounds amazing, because then it really does become like a steady stream of income. Do you think you'll do that by just having that many different corporations, or by having lots of repeaters, within the same corporation?
I'm definitely going to go back to clients that I've been with in the past first, just because like I know that they like me. So it's just easier to get booked that way. But yeah, I have a couple clients where I have not necessarily agreements, but sort of an understanding that I'm going to come every few months, just because that's just what we've talked about. But yeah, ideally try to get a series going, and you can offer a discount for them booking more than 1 workshop. And that's usually a good way to plan out your income for the quarter, especially. So yeah, I would try that.
Yeah, no, that's super smart. Super smart. If you're going to go through the effort of booking, try to get them to, buy a package, a bundle. I love that. And I know you're like amazing at cranking this stuff out. Like you give Kristen a topic, she's going to create a beautiful workshop, so I believe that you'll be able to do one of these every week. So I just want to remind everyone, if you want to learn more about this, get more specifics on how Kristen does her workshops and how you could do yours, not just for corporations, but for other organizations within your community, or even for your own audience. We're going to go much deeper in our full-length free training on November 10th. It's called How to Create a Workshop for Corporate Clients and Your Community. And registration is now open for that free training at healthcoachpower.com/create workshop. And we'll look forward to seeing you there. Kristen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. See you on the 10th.
Sounds good. Take care, everybody.